Hi, this is Marty from Photoshop Arthouse. I'm going to show you how to create compelling torn paper photo portraits. I provided this torn paper image that we'll use for this project. Its link is in my video's description or project files. The first step is to delete the black shape in the middle from the rest of our image. There are many ways to do this. However, for this example, let's open our Quick Selection tool and make it 10 pixels. Drag the tool over the black area until you see it's all selected. Go to Select and Save Selection. When you see this window, click OK or press Enter or Return. Click the Lock icon to unlock the background and press the Delete key on your keyboard to delete the black shape. Deselect it by pressing Ctrl or Command D. With your Quick Selection tool still active, place it over the flap and drag over it until it selects both the top and bottom. Press Ctrl or Command J to cut and copy the flap onto its own layer. Let's name it Flap. Go back to the flap and this time drag the tool just over the top of it. Press Ctrl or Command J to cut and copy the top of the flap onto its own layer. Let's name it Top of Flap and temporarily hide both flap layers. Open a photo you'd like to use for this project. I downloaded this one from Shutterstock. We'll place it into the torn paper image by opening our Move tool and dragging the photo onto the tab of the torn paper base. Without releasing our mouse or pen, we'll drag it down and release. Before we resize and position it, let's reduce its opacity so we can see the torn paper behind it. We'll press Ctrl or Command T to open our Transform tool. We want to size and position the face inside the hole of the paper. To reposition it, go inside the Transform's bounding box and drag it. To resize it, go to a corner and press and hold Alt or Option as you drag it in or out. Then press Enter or Return. Increase its opacity back to 100%. If the Transform's bounding box of your subject extended past the torn paper document, let's crop your subject to the size of the torn paper image. To do this, press Ctrl or Command A to select the document and go to Image and Crop. Then deselect it by pressing Ctrl or Command D. Next, let's isolate our subject from its background. There are many ways to do this, but for this example, open the Properties panel. If it's not visible, go to Window and select Properties. Click Remove Background. This will create a layer mask in the shape of our subject. Think of layer masks as stencils or cookie cutters. The white area in the layer mask reveals the subject, while the black area hides the background. We'll place white under our subject by creating a new layer beneath it. Hold Ctrl on Windows or Command on a Mac as you click the new layer icon. We'll fill the empty layer with white, but before we do, check your foreground and background colors. If they are not set to black and white, press D on your keyboard to reset them. If they are inverted, press X. With white as the background color, press Ctrl or Command plus Delete on Windows or Command plus Delete on a Mac. Next, let's convert the visible image into a smart object so we can modify it non-destructively. Shift-click the top layer to make it active as well, then click the icon in the upper right corner and click Convert to Smart Object. Drag it below the flap layers. We'll now make a copy of the subject, but before we do, keep in mind that when you make a copy of a smart object, any edits you make to one copy will apply to all copies. If you want to edit one copy independently, click the icon in the upper right and choose New Smart Object via Copy. Double-click the thumbnail of the copy to open the source file, then reduce its opacity to 70%. Close the source file and click Yes when prompted to save the changes. Drag the torn paper layer between the two subjects, then hide the bottom subject. We want the subject copy to show just outside the hole in the paper. To do this, hold Alt or Option while hovering between the subject copy and the torn paper layer. When the cursor changes into a clipping mask icon, click it to clip the subject to the layer. Alternatively, you can go to Layer in the top menu and click Create Clipping Mask. Make the clipped subject active, then click the Adjustment Layer icon and select Black and White. Make the clipped subject active again and change its blend mode to multiply. Reveal the bottom flap and make it active. Shift-click the torn paper layer to select it and the 3 layers above it. Then convert the 4 active layers into a single smart object. Next, we'll add a soft dark vignette around the inner edge of the image. Go to Filter and Lens Correction. Open the Custom tab and under Vignette, drag the Amount slider all the way to the left. Press Enter or Return twice to confirm. Go to Filter, Pixelate, and Mezzotint. Set the type to Fine Dots. Double-click the icon to the right of Mezzotint to open its blending options. Change the mode to Soft Light and its opacity to 20%. Make the color subject visible as well as the top of the flap. Next, we'll add a soft shadow cast by the torn paper onto the color subject inside the hole. Double-click an empty area of the flap layer to open its layer style window. Click Drop Shadow. You'll notice I have 2 drop shadows. The second one was added earlier. If a layer style has a plus sign next to it, that means you can add multiple copies of it. Click the plus sign to create a new drop shadow. For the first drop shadow, the blend mode is multiply, the color is black, and the opacity is 10%. The angle is 130 degrees, the distance is 60 pixels, the spread is 0, and the size is 20 pixels. The contour is linear. Click the second drop shadow. Keep all the same settings except change the opacity to 30%, the distance to 30 pixels, and the size to 30 pixels. Lastly, we'll hide the dark edges around the hole by adding a stroke. Click Stroke. Click the color box, and for the brightness, type in 70%. The size is 1 pixel, the position is inside, the blend mode is exclusion, and the opacity is 40%. This is Marty from Photoshop Arthouse. Thanks for watching.